I'd like to say something really quick before starting this. Hindsight is 2020. It is usually considered easy for people to come up with a solution after it's too late and the results of the original attempt are already known. I'm not saying my idea is right or good. I am very much not a writer. I'm two things you don't want in a worker: lazy and dumb. Terrible combo. I, however, found myself in the same camp as many others regarding the story of Dawntrail, finding it very much not what I was looking forward to when it came to the continuation of the Final Fantasy XIV story after the Hydaelyn and Zodiac saga. The MSQ for the first time in years felt subpar to that which came before. There are people in the community at each other's throats for Dawntrail, even when it comes to topics that have nothing to do with the in-game writing. And those who talk about the writing in a defensive way, they just keep bringing up that it's a setup like a Realm Reborn. That argument is being used as an excuse for poor writing. When I first played the game, a Realm Reborn got me interested in the world right away. So this whole thing of, well, it's the new ARR, so shut up, holds no water. The idea of, well, of course it's bad, it should be bad, is absurd. I know there are those who like it, but I'm not making this for them. I'm making this for myself and for those who would be interested in hearing a different take on the story that made them feel like they were being treated as children. And for those who enjoyed it, maybe you can see the story in a different light if you're introduced with something more than what you were given. The world of Tural was so interesting to me until it turned out to be such a peaceful dreamland where everyone got along. The constant praise for peace and happiness got so tiresome, and the constant reminders of what was just said, as if the players are too dumb to remember, was infuriating. Being forced to babysit a character who would not shut up about peace and happiness, constantly taking away the spotlight from everyone around her, not just the Warrior of Light. Wuk Lamat could have worked if she was allowed to give space for other characters to do anything. But with that being said, I want to reiterate, I am not a writer, and this video is made from a place of love for Final Fantasy XIV. Hoping people give it a chance, and to maybe see that things could change on the formula to spice things up in the future. We were told we had 10 more years of this. So don't you want something different every 2 years instead of the same old? Regardless, this is just a fun project of some idiot with access to a Google Doc and too much time in his plate. In this video, I will tackle the starting MSQ level 90 quest of my personal rewrite of Dawntrail's story, and we'll tackle the other zones in a separate video if things go well. I'm not super good at this, so pardon me if it's rather short and somewhat incoherent. So with that being said, let's get right into it with some changes all the way back to 6.58 that are mostly pet peeves of mine, I'm gonna be honest here, and some plot setups that will help with the idea I have for Dawntrail's main story. The story of 7.58 remains mostly the same, but a couple of small changes to the dialogue. For starters, let's respect G'raha a little bit more, please. This is such a minor thing, but when I was going through this, I won't deny that G'raha pointing out that it is odd Wuk Lamat is a royal despite being a Hrothgar, while it is known the Dawn Servant is a Mamulja, and having Wuk Lamat go, actually, unlike some people think. With G'raha being so submissive to her corrections bothered me quite a little bit. Having a new character introduced talking down to a beloved character for pointing out the common knowledge is not exactly a good impression. Another thing being that during the 6.58 instance, let's just slow down with how much she talks during it. I swear, she had a line of dialogue for every swing of her axe during combat. I know it seems like nonsense and such a minor complaint, but first impressions do a lot to sell a character, and it was not good when by the time I was fighting the giant colibri, I kept saying, shut up! This was all the way before Dawntrail. Regardless, with those nitpicks out of the way, let's get into the actual story for this rewrite. After the fight with the giant colibri, we have Wuk Lamat point out how big this bird is, and it looks a lot like the ones from Tural, but much bigger. Erenville confirms this by analyzing the bird's droppings, plumage, and markings on a piece of cloth the bird had on it, that it is indeed Turali, and how that is confusing as there is no record of this creature being in Sharlayan habitats. This prompts Krile and G'raha into an interesting query they can bring to the Sharlayan higher-ups. Wuk Lamat then asks us to join forces with her in the upcoming Rite of Succession. Same old. She understands she may be hesitant since you know nothing about her and her people to be intervening like this, so she requests your help acting more as a bodyguard and research team than a force obligated to help her win. This is a business transaction, not a friendly helping hand. We are of course encouraged not only on the promise of an adventure, but on making sure the warmonger member of the royal family doesn't get a chance to bring trouble to Eorzea. Kryl brings up that the excursion could be turned into an official Students of Aldesian expedition to investigate her grandfather's ties to Dawn Servant and the sudden appearance of a Turali beast in Sharlayan shores. This is where we have the biggest shift for the narrative. Instead of bringing Alphinaud and Alisaie, we have Kryl and G'raha come with us. Alphinaud offered G'raha that he and Alisaie would stay behind to watch over the Annex and the rest of the Order on his behalf. This being done without Alisaie's knowledge, which she will later make very much Alphinaud's problem. So you may be wondering why this change. Very simple. The twins contribute nothing in the original Dawntrail story. They mostly just reinforce what Wuk Lamat thinks and says without nothing past helping with some healing. It is very much a common sentiment that the Scions were just cardboard cutouts through the entire MSQ, and I'd like to fix that. So why bring our boy G'raha specifically? Very simple. He gets to go on a proper quote-unquote small-scale adventure, we know how this goes, alongside the Warrior of Light and Kryl. Not only that, the biggest thing I hear people say about the story is that the Warrior of Light is a mentor to Wuk Lamat, and I will never understand this. We do nothing resembling mentorship other than just raise up her self-esteem. In my opinion, G'raha should be the Wuk Lamat's mentor. He has the knowledge and credentials as the former Crystal Exarch. He will be the Merlin to her Arthur. He is sagely advised in Wuk Lamat's moments of needs. And if you really want to push the trust system, which I personally despise, and feel like it's ruining the MSQ writing and the dungeon design, oh, well that's something for another video. G'raha can fill any 3 roles. I mention this because you cannot deny to me the story felt like it had the Scions of the Seventh Dawn only there to fill in as NPCs for dungeons and trials. I personally believe that the story twisting itself to have these roles filled is in the long run going to ruin the game, as the writers have to find ways to make sure you have NPCs available for every content, and it will affect how moments play out. We will always have conveniently the exact amount of people needed for everything, and that, at least I believe, breaks my suspension of disbelief I can give to this game. But with our exploration team set, we embark towards Tural. The only major change I have for this is just to take away Wuk Lamat's seasickness. I mean, she didn't have it during 6.58, so why add it now? It feels like they just wanted to add some comedy to her due to fan response, but I don't know, it felt too constant through the original MSQ. We'll keep her fear of heights instead. Now, I was debating about this for a while, if I wanted to make the storm an instance where you go around helping people on the boat, or keep it a cutscene. But as much as I want to make it an instance, I can understand that pulling too many of these might become annoying to players, especially since I have another one planned for this level of the MSQ. So we keep the storm a cutscene to show the Warrior of Light's capabilities as Wuk Lamat tries to keep people from falling off the ship, showing she is not just a brute, but a caring person willing to get into action when people are in need. Now this is where the fun begins. We have made it to Leollal. Arriving at the port goes just the same as before. But as Erenbil comes up with the idea of splitting up to avoid being in a big group through the city, the player is given what I feel this game needs more of: a choice. Or at least the illusion of one. The Warrior of Light is given the choice between 2 groups to navigate to Leollal with: Erenbil and Kryl, or Wuk Lamat and G'raha. Not only does this give the agency to the player of who they want to venture with, but it will also give us different insights on the characters. Not to mention a very small replayability option or collaborative storytelling, learning from other players what happened on their end. But wait, Brachy, doesn't this mean the player may miss out on some important lore details? No, not really. We will learn the same points of interest of the city, just different perspectives. You won't miss anything of import that won't be touched upon later. And even if you feel like you did, New Game Plus is a thing. Or you can ask your friends what the other characters said. Now for example, if we go with Erenbil and Kryl, we will be seeing points of interest from the perspective of Erenbil, who hasn't been in the city in years. New places, new people at the stalls, and those who left that he didn't know were gone. The people who do know him recognize him as Wuk Lamat's childhood friend, something he tries to dismiss. We get to see Kryl ask about her earring and her grandfather to no avail. Erenville and Kryl get to share their disposition as support members for the team. On the other hand, if we choose to go with Wuk Lamat and Graha, we get to see firsthand she does know the city's most popular spots, but seems to get some details wrong. Something Graha picks up on since her people seem to doubt her knowledge but do nothing to correct her, instead just agreeing with her. This shows us it is clear she is in a position where people won't dare correct her, even if she seems to be approachable. Building up the reason why she tends to be so ignorant of a lot of things. No one will try to correct her. Either way, we learn about the points of interest of the city at all the same. The quest ends with us receiving a link shell call to meet up at the Tuliolal Saga spot before going to get food. Once we get back together, either Graha or Kryl, depending on who was on the other group, will tell the Warrior of Light something around the lines of, Erenville seems to be regarded very close to Wuk Lamat by people in the city, and I am afraid to say it, but it feels as if Wuk Lamat's people don't seem to want to correct her on misinformation about the city. Something along those lines. Nothing too time consuming, but enough to let the player know the main takeaway from the exploration quest. Now that we are at the Tuliolal Saga, we skip it. We do not bother with this boring, dull, and tedious exposition. Mainly because we will be promptly interrupted by a new addition to the story, the Landsguard Commander. As we are getting ready for the enthralling task of reading these tablets, we are met with a group of guards who Wuk Lamat seems to be exasperated at. The Landsguard Commander is this plated member of the Landsguard who, alongside his subordinates, try to enforce the third promise to return with them to the palace, post haste. Erenville makes an exasperated comment about how the third promise is free to roam the city as she pleases. With this, the commander shows his dislike for Erenville, calling him a little ruffian as always, which implies a history between them. The commander will not let the group go without a fight. Wuk Lamat requests your help to knock some sense into the commander. Maybe tiring him will give the group a chance to sneak away. The Warrior of Light gets the options to accept in a cocky manner or an agreeable one. We now enter into an instance fight with hijinks music. This is very much a Hildebrand quest moment where the commander does some running around and proves to be a capable fighter despite his absurd disposition. At around 1/4 of the commander's HP, the commander exclaims, "Enough of this! Formation!" As the Warrior of Light is marked with an AoE marker, a stack marker, chained up with a home gang, and as the cherry on top, a tank buster, each one of these being placed by a different member of the squadron. The commander exclaims that the third promise pays attention and gets ready to come back with him to the palace, but the group is nowhere to be found. At the same time, the city's drum that was introduced to us during the whole exploration part is wrong. Confused, he calls off the attack, and his squadron splits to search the city and what the drum was wrong for. The Warrior of Light is contacted by Kryl to guide them to their location. As the Warrior of Light is asked if they are okay, the player is given a few options. Yeah, he just caught me off guard. I almost went back to the Ethereal Sea back there. Or say nothing. Something I want to emphasize to the player is that the Warrior of Light, despite being considered by the player base a God-slayer multi-universal entity, they are still human. Overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer. With that taken care of, we move on to the restaurant. Wuk Lamat does not describe the tacos as crunchy, and we move on with our encounter with Bakul Jaja as usual, where he destroys the tacos. And now that they are not described as crunchy, I am actually mad about it. As we are talking about our encounter with Bakul Jaja, we are met with Namika and Serelja. Wuk Lamat introduces them and points out how Serelja is a grumpy old man. Serelja snaps at her, saying how she is the only one that makes him a grumpy old man. The two of them find themselves here since they took notice of some ruckus going on in the city, and word that the first and the third promise were arriving in the city today. When they heard the drum go off, they assumed the first promise had arrived, but seemed to have been some troublemakers who rang it. You wouldn't happen to know who was it now, would you? Cyril just says at Wuk Lamat with a serious face. As we try to come up with an excuse, the drum is rang for the first promise's arrival from the North Bridge. We see a group of Lancers carrying this massive dead monster to the gates, just like in the trailer. Serelja approaching the first promise to communicate something as Wuk Lamat attempts to get the attention of her brother. The both of them, though, walking straight to the palace. One of the Lance Guards tells the third promise not to take it personal. The first promise has been very serious since the Tural Vidral's attack, more so than usual. Many casualties in the north were caused by this abomination. Wuk Lamat expresses, another one. Kreha, taking notice of this, asks if Tural Bidral are a common sight in Tural, to which Namika responds that not as much as they have been in the past few months. They may not be as strong as the Tural Bidral of legends, but they are still dangerous creatures to deal with. With this fresh in our minds, we make our way to the palace, to meet with the Dawn Servant at last. We have our Gulul Jaja versus Athenian scene play as usual, not much to add here. Gulul Jaja invites us all to gather at the dining hall as he wants to give us all a proper welcome and discuss the Rite of Succession's rules over a hearty meal. We are then introduced to the second promise and his companions, Thancred and Urianger, instead of waiting like 6 hours before we get to see them in an on-voice cutscene. No, I do not understand why that was a thing, but going back to this. Thancred making a cheeky comment at us joining the winning team, since we seem to need all the help we can get, implying he saw the whole thing at the Tuliyola saga, which is a little embarrassing. As everyone is seated and taking their meal, this scene, I'm going to admit, is completely self-indulgent, mind you. I like the Warrior of Light to have a very dumb, funny choice of what to grab. You have the option to grab tacos, fruits, or a big steak. Choosing the tacos gives us a slight comment towards Bakul Jaja destroying our tacos earlier. Choosing the fruits makes Koana give a hint of approval for a fresh start of the meal, even commenting how it may not be as good as Archon bread, but it will do for nutritional values. Now, choosing the big steak is weirdly enough just a joke for me, I will admit. As you grab the big steak, you see Soralja's hand was about to grab it, but he reaches for some chicken after you took the steak first. Just a look of dismissal from him. I honestly don't know why, but this just tickles my funny bone, to the point that players could start doing memes of Soralja going full on evil just because we stole his steak. I don't know why, it's just funny to me. And you want to make this story a little funny, don't you? So add some comedy to it, why not? As we are all having our meal, the tablets, actually, are presented to us alongside the rules of the Rite of Succession, which I am changing for the sake of better pacing of the events. The first major change being that the rite is not a race. I'm gonna be honest, I don't get why the rite was built up to be a race when one of them requires all participants to be available for a team exercise, which kind of nullifies the urgency of things and would be weird if one of the contestants was disqualified before this. It is still one of the dumbest decisions of the MSQ, and trust me, we will get to fixing this pairing in the future. I think it would be much better if the pairs were Kon and Bakul Jaja and Wuk Lamat and Soralja. But that's just me. We are going to have the rite take place at specific periods of time, making it so we have break days in which we can interact with other characters and research Kryle's grandfather adventure in Tuliyola. Not to mention, we can get some hijinks, like even a beach episode. Again, you said this was going to be like a vacation time, so why not add a beach episode in between time? We know it's going to turn into horrors at the end, but for now, have fun. Now, I know Yoshi P is rock hard for the 2 starting zones, so we can still keep this available by giving the excuse that the recent storm causing damage to the Hanu Hanu made it so they extended the period of time combining it with the Pelu Pelu, which means the contestants are free to tackle whichever they prefer first. Once all trials have taken place and all keystones have been acquired, the real race begins, the search for the Golden City. With the contestants armed with knowledge gained through their trials and now able to claim the keystones from other contestants. After all of this is explained, Soralja grumbles and out loud expresses his disdain for this game his father made. You make a mockery of our people with your contest, but if this is the only way, then so be it. I will find your Golden City. As Soralja storms off, Koana expresses, "Brother, wait!" as he attempts to chase him, but stopped by Gulul Jaja. Do not concern yourself, my child. My dear son is clearly not in the mood for talking. After an average meal experience at your friend's house, we depart from the palace. Wuk Lamat tells us that she has arranged some cabins for our groups to stay in. Sadly, due to the high influx of visitors coming to the city for the Rite of Succession, an incoming festival and trade in general, she could only secure 2 cabins. Even a princess can't ask her people to give out commodities all willy-nilly. Now, this is where I'd like to introduce something I want to see more in Final Fantasy XIV's expansions. I want to add more, quotation marks, permanent choices for the players to have made. But don't worry, you can choose a different path in New Game Plus, so you don't personally miss out on anything. You can still replay it with a different choice. I personally noticed the cabins in Tulliola are actually made for 2 people to stay in, so we are asked how we want to split. The Warrior of Light is given the choice: no sharing the cabin, share the cabin with Kryl, Grahatia, or Erenville. If the Warrior of Light chooses not to share the cabin, the team will simply just respect their privacy, and Kryl and Graha will decide to share a cabin as they are used to living together due to the Sharlayan College dormitories. Erenville in the meantime will say he has no problem staying somewhere else. As he tries to escape, Wuk Lamat will strong-arm him, saying, "Nuh-uh, you're staying with me if that's how this is gonna be, like old times." To which Erenville just groans. Sometimes during the MSQ, Erenville will even comment on not being able to sleep properly due to the royal symphony of the Third Promise. If the Warrior of Light chooses to share their cabin with Kryl, Graha, or Erenville, the player will have unique cutscenes with each of them after special events in the MSQ, and they can even be found inside the cabin, either relaxing, cleaning, cooking, or even exercising. After making this choice, we say goodnight to our companions and enter the cabin. Once inside, we get a cutscene depending on who the Warrior of Light chose as a roommate. Erenville will speak about how this was not what he had in mind when doing his homecoming. He promised to guide you, but he's not looking forward to babysitting the Third Promise. Graha is found calling Alphinaud Slingshell clearly guilty over leaving the students of Aldessian behind while self-indulging on an adventure. Alphinaud reinforces to him that everything is okay, before being interrupted by Alice screaming at him. Kryl shares with the Warrior of Light that she is excited to adventure with them, since she has always been on the sidelines. If you have Eureka progression, she can even remark, either if you completed it. She comments how even back then she was mostly waiting and over-relying on you, but can't stress enough how much she appreciates your help on finding out what happened in concluding her grandfather's work. If you haven't finished Eureka, she points out that you two should probably get back to the expedition at some point, feeling guilt over leaving it to the rest of the expedition to hold the fort. After this, the player proceeds to sleep, waiting for the next day. As the Warrior of Light drifts asleep, a very light, nothing whisper can be heard coming from the dark dream, with a flickering golden light further in the distance. This moment of sleep interrupted for the Warrior of Light. As the Warrior of Light looks around their room to see either nobody there, or if they chose a roommate, their companion on the bed opposite to theirs. This is where one of the big variants of our choice is clear to us. If the Warrior of Light chooses Erenville or Graha, they will be seen fast asleep in their pajamas. Erenville, by the way, Erenville sleeps shirtless, for those interested in knowing, and Graha has a cute chocobo pajama. But if the Warrior of Light chose Kryl, she will be wide awake, just the same as the Warrior of Light. It appears I was not the only one hearing whispers, was I? The Warrior of Light given the chance to share seeing the bright light, or asking if she understood any of the whispers. Kryl finds herself just as lost as the Warrior of Light, confused and reassuring herself that it could not be Hydaelyn speaking to them since she is no longer with us. Maybe the echo of an echo? Who is to know? As we fade to black, the morrow comes. If you didn't choose Kryl as a roommate, she will share in the morning that she heard whispers in the night. And now, the big aperture of the rite goes as normal. Ember is sharing with us why the followers of each promise supports them. Wuk Lamat is still shown to be dismissed by most of the people in the city who already follow a different promise. With the opening celebrations out of the way, Wuk Lamat introduces us to a Hanu Hanu from the Kosamauka, and Erenville introduces us to a Pelu Pelu from Murkopacha, as he has secured transport with the Alpaca stables. And here, we are going to end the level 90 introductory quest for Dawntrail Rewritten, the Tulliolan section. That took longer than I probably should have. I know I introduced a lot of things to the story that were not there, and maybe I also introduced too many characters too fast, but I wanted to have a template for setting up moments in the later MSQ. I can promise that the raid quests won't be this overwhelming. If anything, they may remain mostly the same, but for some points changing to make them not as slog to go through and hopefully a bit more fun. I promise you, there's going to be gameplay. I don't know if this is better or worse than what we currently have, but it's what I personally think the game could use more of. I am in love with the idea of having the player make more choices, and the roommate option is something I feel a lot of players would enjoy. For now, I'm going to go prepare myself for the Occult Crescent if I manage to edit this before that came out, and get some of these MSQ rewrite notes in paper for the rest of the MSQ. I once again want to apologize if this is not that good. I am not a writer, and I'm sure there are many things here that could use some polish I myself am incapable of doing. I have an idea of where I want the story to go from here on, but I need to properly decide how to get there. However, I can tell you a couple of things. I am taking heavy inspirations from Crystal Chronicles, Final Fantasy X, and of course Final Fantasy IX for this rewrite of the MSQ. I firmly believe the main theme of the next 10 years of Final Fantasy XIV will be memory, from forming new memories to losing them. So if you find yourself interested, let me know. Be sure to leave a comment to share your thoughts, share the video with your friends, and follow me on my socials. I appreciate everyone's support on my Patreon, and I wish you all a good rest of your day. Take care, stay safe, and I'll be talking to you next time. Bye bye everybody.